Welcome. It's Pastor Pam and Pip. And today, the adventures of Pip take us from the seeds to the harvest. Early on in the season, Charlotte and Faye went to the community gardens and tended to the soil and worked the ground, and then they planted seeds. They watered them and they tended to them, and they had to wait. That reminds me of this picture. Here's a picture of Noah beside the sunflower he and his family grew a few years ago. It reminded Pip and I of the story of the mustard seed. A mustard seed is very, very tiny, but once planted, it grows into a large enough plant to provide valuable food and shelter for animals. It's like a tree. Have you ever seen a mustard seed? The mustard seed is the smallest of all seeds. It's so small that if you were holding one in your hand and you dropped it, you would have a very hard time finding it because it is so hard to see. Even though the mustard seed is so small, when it is planted in the ground, it grows into a tree large enough for birds to stand on its branches and to make their nests in it. When you look at a little mustard seed before planting it in the ground, you might think it would be impossible for a seed so tiny to grow into a tree. But once planted, our God turns that tiny seed into a wonderful place. It grows into a plant large enough to provide valuable food and shelter for animals. When Jesus told this story, he compared it to the love of God. When we begin to love Jesus, our love is like a tiny mustard seed before it is planted in the ground. It starts out very small at first. Then, when we keep on listening to what Jesus says and shows our kindness and love to others like Jesus does, then the love inside of us grows bigger and bigger. Soon it will grow like the big mustard tree. I think there's a whole lot of love at the community garden. And I think Noah and his family gave this gigantic sunflower a whole lot of love too. Pip had a lot of fun this summer. Pip enjoyed visiting the gardens and seeing the crops growing and growing. And all the while, Faye and Charlotte would go and water and pick vegetables that were ready to be eaten, tend to the gardens. Pip would go and check out the tomatoes that were just starting to get a little pink, and the kale that would grow taller than Pip. And check out the carrots as they grew. Such an abundance. Pip had to even go searching and looking under the great big leaves to see the zucchinis growing. And wow, the beets were getting redder and redder in the stems, and they were growing almost right out of the ground. Pip particularly enjoyed running after the zucchinis that were growing right out of the garden beds. And at the end of the summer, the harvest came. and all the vegetables were picked and shared with the community in the food box program, and to Colson Court, and to anyone who needed some vegetables on their table. What a feast. What a harvest. God is so good. We are grateful for all of the people that help to feed the community and to tend the gardens and work at the Bread and Roses program. Pip and I are especially grateful for this harvest season and this Thanksgiving. God is good. Happy Thanksgiving.